Hi everyone, this is Summer Gathercole. I am the facilitator of today's webinar. This is a 12-part series that is sponsored by WorkLife Partnership on innovative work incentive practices. We are highlighting non-traditional methods of incentivizing employees and supporting the workforce. So today's webinar, we're excited to share with you, is focused on Tyson Foods and how they have developed a workplace education program. So today, we're going to learn about Tyson Foods, and they are a lot more than just chicken, so you're going to hear all about that. You're going to hear about why they decided to launch this workplace education program, as well as how it works, what is working, and the challenges that they've had to overcome. And you'll also hear some words of advice for those of you who might be interested in replicating this type of program. So a couple of logistics before we jump in. All of the participants are on mute, and the purpose of that is to help eliminate the background noise. However, if you have questions, which we want you to ask them, please put them in the chat box. I will be monitoring the chat box throughout the webinar today, so I'll be looking at your questions, and we'll ask them to our presenter after he is done providing the overview of their program. And finally, for those of you who are with us for the entire webinar today, we want to encourage you to complete our 1-minute survey at the end of this webinar. One randomly selected respondent will receive a $15 Amazon card. So again, we really want your feedback. We want your questions, so stick with us today. I'm excited to share with you today our presenter, Kevin Shear. He is a Senior Manager of Employee Social Responsibility at Tyson Foods. Prior to joining Tyson Foods, Kevin served as the Executive Director for 2 nationwide nonprofits whose programming targets domestic and international service learning experiences among the homeless and working poor. So Kevin has been doing a lot of good in the world. He's also a board-certified chaplain and the author of a book entitled Truly Human, Recovering Your Humanity in a Broken World, and that happens to have a 5-star rating on Amazon. So check it out. Kevin and his wife Nancy have 5 girls, so he has his hands full at work and at home. Kevin, we know you're super busy. We are so excited to have you with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Summer. Wonderful, Summer. Thank you so much for the introduction. It's very kind of you, and thank you everyone for attending the webinar. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Tyson Foods before I get into the specifics about the program that we're running here for our team members. Tyson Foods has been around for 8+ decades. We are sort of in the space of sort of acquisitions right now, and I think the company is up to around 130,000 employees. Over 100,000 of those employees actually work our processing lines. We are in growth mode right now, and we have a growing presence internationally in India and China. But we like to think of ourselves really as a portfolio of brands. So many of the brands that you see there on the presentation deck, I'm sure you're familiar with. Perhaps you didn't realize that they were a Tyson brand, especially brands like Sara Lee. Many people don't know that we're more than just chicken. Most people associate us with chicken, but not only are we the largest chicken producer in the United States, but we're also the #1 beef and #2 pork. We're also in prepared foods as well. We have, in my opinion, the best bacon out there. If you've eaten the corn dog recently, it was probably a Tyson corn dog. If you've had pepperoni on a pizza in the last year, it's probably from Tyson Foods. We're into a lot of things. We even do tortillas. But again, most people know us for chicken, but we're a whole lot more than that. We're a large company, about $37 billion in annual revenue. We're number 82 in the Fortune 100 list, and we're proud of that. And as often as possible, we like to use that place on the Fortune 100 list as leverage for good. And that's what this program that I'm going to tell you about this afternoon is all about. So Tyson Foods sort of stumbled into the workplace education program about 3 years ago. we were wrestling with some issues with one particular ethnic community here in Northwest Arkansas. And this particular community had become sort of vulnerable to some predatory activities in the area, and we were trying to help our employees, and so we began to sort of reverse engineer the problem, and we began to identify the specific vulnerabilities in these team members' lives. We don't call them employees, we call them team members. And as we began to identify sort of more and more vulnerabilities in their lives, we realized that we might be able to create some sort of specific, relevant, and creative interventions that might help stabilize the lives of these employees so that they would be less vulnerable to this predatory activity in the community. So we piloted a program at one of our smaller plants, and when we piloted the program, one of my colleagues here at corporate asked me, he said, "Kevin, what do you think success will look like in this program? Should we pilot it?" And I said, "Well, I think if we have 10 or 15 of our team members who participate, that's a good place to start and a good place to gain some traction in the program." Well, we piloted the program, and on the first day, we had nearly 130 people within the plant respond to this program. We were overwhelmed and thought that it was probably a fluke, and so we piloted it at another plant and got an even more overwhelming response. Well, to make a very long story very, very short, this was the birth of a workplace education initiative at Tyson Foods that we call Upward Academy. An Upward Academy is an in-plant education program that provides free classes in English language acquisition, high school equivalency, and citizenship. But that's not all. We've also begun to launch into other areas as well: digital literacy, financial literacy. We've even done some driver's education programs. Basically, anything that helps to stabilize the lives of our team members, and not just them, but their families as well. So our working thesis is that the more stable the lives of our employees are, the more stable our workforce metrics are. And for a company that is in the food retail manufacturing sector, productivity and metrics is everything. And I like to say often that at Tyson we measure everything. And we were seeing some of the messiness in the workforce metrics, and we believe that is directly connected to the vulnerabilities and the complexities and the nuances and even messiness of the lives of some of the employees that we had on the processing lines. So we created this Upward Academy. It's available to all of the team members in our plants. We created it in such a way that it didn't interfere with plant operations, and so it happens before and after shifts. It's completely voluntary. Team members are not even paid. This is off the clock. And the way that we've been able to pull it off inside our processing plants is that we've partnered with federal and state and even local partnerships. And so the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which is federal monies, you might know it as WIOA, has about $500 million that's distributed to the states, and that money is mixed with state funds that enable adult education to provide these services: ESL, GED, citizenship, even technical training inside workplace settings. And so what we do is we work with state leadership, and we meet with the directors, of adult ed in each state, and say, we have X amount of plants in your state. That represents X amount of employees. we'd like to partner with you to provide, these kinds of instructional opportunities in the plant. It's really a win-win partnership because the federal monies that come to these states come with certain stipulations. One of those stipulations is that they work with local businesses, corporations to provide workforce development training. And so when we come knocking at the door, they're usually very, very happy to talk with us. They're usually excited to work with us. Unfortunately, our scale is a bit intimidating sometimes. So we have some very, very large plants, and so capacity can be an issue sometimes. Just a few facts about our program, at least where we're at right now in the rollout. The executive leadership team at Tyson has given us the green light to roll this program out to every one of our plants in our 29-state footprint. But currently, we've launched it in 18 plants. We're just about finished with the state of Arkansas. We have a lot of plants in the state of Arkansas. This is our home state. 22 plants and about 24,000 employees. So we're just about finished rolling it out in Arkansas. And in 2018, we're headed to Texas, Nebraska, North Carolina, and Kentucky. Already told you a little bit about how we offer those services by partnering with federal, state, and community partners. Our team members represent a demographic that many federal, state, and community nonprofits are very, very eager to reach. And so again, it's a great win-win partnership. Currently, we have about 1,000 students who are enrolled in daily classes. So typically, ESL classes are happening 2 to 3 days a week in a plant. ESL and GED classes are typically happening 1 day a week. We've got about 150,000+ instructional hours represented in these 18 launches. So we're real proud of where we've been and where we're going, and this is just sort of phase one, but we're real proud of the scale that we've been able to operate at. I'll tell you about some of our challenges, try to be transparent. Again, we sort of stumbled into this, and this is sort of an exercise in social entrepreneurship, and that's definitely what this is. Part of this, we've been bootstrapping from the beginning and sort of figuring it out as we go along, and none of this would have been possible without some really, really great partners. But finding those partnerships hasn't always been easy. We have, again, the 100,000 team members who work on our processing lines are an economically diverse population. Many of them would be classified as the working poor, and so there's a lot of, again, complexities and nuances about their lives that can create some challenges when you're looking at developing relevant interventions. So we were looking from the beginning for empathetic partnerships and not just sympathetic partnerships, because we knew that empathetic partnerships would understand the ideal that, and not just the idea that we were driving at, and this whole idea of workplace stability and personal and familial stability. So fortunately, we were able to find a lot of empathetic partnerships within the company, this has been a challenge for Tyson Foods to sort of take a different look at its workforce and think about it in different ways and think about different interventions. But fortunately, again, we've found a lot of empathetic partnerships and a lot of empathetic partnerships outside the company as well. I will tell you probably the single greatest challenge that we've faced in this workplace education initiative is the scale that we represent. So unfortunately, adult education in the United States is really sort of under prioritized and underfunded. And Some states have larger budgets than others, but we have some really, really large plants. We have plants that are 4,000 team members, and typically when we go into a plant to launch the program, we have around 10% of the entire plant population who ends up in daily classes. So, for instance, some of these large plants where we have 4,000 team members and maybe as many as 25 to 27 spoken languages, that's a really, really big scale for an adult education department, either at the state level or at the community level, to provide instruction for. So that's been a real challenge. And sometimes when we create these partnerships with state leadership, they find a way of meeting our sort of capacity needs, but then that often sort of creates a vacuum for other companies or other groups or other towns or cities who want to access those same adult education services. So that's something that we're working on, trying to find creative ways of subsidizing adult education here in the U.S. Another really challenging hurdle we faced is finding educational space in our plants. I always tell people that at Tyson we kill things. We kill things and process things. We work in protein, and so our facilities weren't designed for educational spaces. So we've had to do a lot of retrofitting and find creative ways to provide sort of emotionally safe places for our team members to learn. Many of our team members are not only illiterate in English, but in their own native languages. And so the whole idea of education can feel very intimidating. And they want to learn in safe places where they don't stand out and where they can sort of lean into this educational challenge in a safe way. But we are finding new ways of addressing that space issue and being successful at it. And then again, I think I've already said this, we have a complicated workforce in the fact that we have so many different ethnic communities, and so trying to find relevant interventions that speak to the communities at that specific plant. So, we say that the core of our program is ESL, GD, and citizenship, and we offer those to all the plants. But as we launch in new plants, we always ask the management there, what particular issues are you facing, in this community? And in some cases, those are outside of ESL, GD, and citizenship. I mentioned the driver's ed. So one of our ethnic communities here in Northwest Arkansas, their language wasn't represented by the driver's test here in the state of Arkansas, and so we worked with the state to get the test translated into their language and uploaded into their proprietary system. And then once that happened, then we needed to take a study guide and teach to it in their language. And so we're always trying to find ways that speak to, again, the individual community needs and to find unique interventions. So one of the things that I feel like that we have done right from the beginning is, and this is just part of our Tyson culture, again, I said earlier that we measure everything. We decided from the very beginning that we wanted program metrics to be really at the center of what we do. And so we've done sort of two things to sort of shore that up. We've partnered with the University of Arkansas, and specifically with one of their sociologists, Dr. Zola Moon, to measure sort of the change in human and social capital as a result of this program. And what you see in front of you on the deck is some of the data that we've received from their first report of our two longest running programs. The program now has been running for about 20 months, and we were very interested to know, sort of outside of the internal metrics, that is retention and attendance and safety recordables and things like that. We wanted to know about some of the external metrics, the changes in, again, human and social capital. So we were really, really pleased with some of the things that we saw that came out of that study. So all or almost all of the participants in the program that were interviewed by the University of Arkansas reported increased in communication at work, home, and in the community. So obviously things like better communication with their supervisors, but even really heartwarming stories like, now I can understand what my grandchildren are saying, and sometimes when we're in the car going somewhere and my grandkids are going back and forth and they don't think that grandma understands. Well, I do now. And then also some increased communication in the community. Team members reporting that for the very first time they were able to call up their doctor and make an appointment all by themselves, and then actually go into the office and fill out all the forms by themselves. So these kind of stories are heartwarming and build a lot of confidence in us that the program is working and creating stability. Again, a feeling of more independence and better equipped to carry out the responsibilities at work and at home. A lot of them say that they feel a greater confidence at work because they can communicate. And then a really cool thing is that they really feel like that they're a lot more satisfied at work. Greater sort of commitment to Tyson Foods and the work they're doing. Increases in feelings of connectedness, inclusion, security, trust, and tolerance of other team members. We saw an increase in their connection outside of their own ethnic community to other ethnic communities in the plants. Again, at some of our larger plants, we have 25 to 27 different spoken languages, so it's a real melting pot. And the fact that they feel connected outside of their own ethnic community is real positive for us. And that's reflected in the next point: greater ability to be more socially interactive with different people at work, with their families and communities. A lot of people mentioned being more involved and connected at church. The last point is really a win for us. A majority of team members interviewed, including those who dropped out of the program, reported appreciation of corporate interest and support in enhancing team members' skill and knowledge, and resulted in feelings of increased loyalty. So we really feel like this program is working, that it's stabilizing team members, and that they see it as a benefit, and they see it as a demonstrable evidence that the company is listening to them. I mentioned the external metrics. We're also looking at internal metrics as well. So again, we measure everything. Right now, we're looking very heavily at the difference in turnover between those students who are in the program versus those students outside of the program. We're looking at attendance, safety recordables, career pathway movement, how many times as a result of this program that team members are applying for other positions there at the local plant, et cetera. So we're still collecting that data. We're just getting some initial reports back. They're all very positive. I'm not in a place to share any of that right yet, but this coming spring we'll be reporting some of that to the executive leadership team and asking for a deeper investment in the program. So I think I've given you sort of 40,000 foot view of Upward Academy and a little bit about the statistics, et cetera. So I'd like to open it up for questions if you have any, and I really appreciate this opportunity.
Kevin, that is great. Thank you so much for sharing all that information. And I have to say how impressive it is that you've had to kind of evolve this program over time, and it's got to be challenging when you've got a plant where there's 25 to 27 different languages that are being spoken, and you're really having to think almost on an individual level, like what do we need to do to really kind of make the program work for all of your plant employees. So kudos to you, because that is a lot of work and a lot of effort, but it certainly sounds like it's paying off. We did have a couple of questions come in. One question, kind of going back to earlier, you talked a little bit about the empathetic partnerships. And so there's some questions around kind of what does that look like internally, who's involved, how do the members of that internal partnership work together? Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so this has been really important to us and continues to be really important to us. So, early on, I went knocking on doors at corporate and explaining to them some of the challenges that our team members on the lines faced, and some of their lives are real messy. And so some people, and very few actually, were, "Oh, I'm sorry," and that's a sympathetic sort of reaction. But a lot of them, the majority of them, said, "Wow, I didn't recognize that. I didn't realize that." That sort of changes the way that I see our workforce at this plant or wherever. I want to help you do something about that. I want to help make a connection. I want to offer resources from my department. I want to get you connected with someone else. So those kinds of empathetic partnerships really in the very beginning are what sort of drove this sort of grassroots program to become a company-wide initiative. And those were partnerships in government relationships, human resources, community relations. We have a chaplaincy program at Tyson Foods. About 100 chaplains across our network. We have a network of training managers throughout all of our different silos. I looked for empathetic partnerships in all of those different places and then sort of got them to work together, to all pull together. And we were really able to drive something from the bottom up as opposed to the top down, which at a company our size can be challenging.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And so to that point, can you talk a little bit more about the role that managers have been playing in the Upward Academy? Are they trained as mentors to support and reinforce what the participants are learning, to support the application of the learning? What does that look like a little bit more?
Yeah, that's a great question. So so we have plant management, and then there are sort of frontline supervisors. And I'm guessing that by that question you sort of mean these frontline managers, these frontline supervisors who are actually supervising the work on the processing floor. So we've just now begun to pilot an orientation training for these frontline supervisors that not only introduces them and orients them to the program, the details of the program, so that they can, encourage team members to sign up and participate, and encourage them as they're struggling to learn the English language or whatever, but also to orient these frontline supervisors to the complexities of the lives of the people that work for them. Oftentimes, frontline management can view things through a middle-class lens, and the vast majority of our team members on the processing floors are entry-level, low-wage workers, and don't see life and don't function in life through a middle-class lens. And so helping our frontline supervisors understand this, appreciate this, connect with this, and understand the complexities of that can really help them be sensitive and to help us as we think about creative interventions working to stabilize the team members on the line. I hope that answers the question. If it doesn't, please let me know, and I'll try to clarify more.
Yeah, no, thanks, Kevin. I think that was great. So based on that, I'm curious, would you say then that the frontline managers are kind of almost evolving into those empathetic partners internally that are supporting or helping to support the program?
No, yeah, absolutely, Summer. I think that, to be honest with you, all of us at Tyson Foods are evolving into more empathetic partners sort of with our team members, understanding the complexities of their lives in a way that helps us to help them more. And again, I mentioned the team members' families, so we're not just concerned with our employees, but their whole family unit. We understand that many of them, especially some of our immigrant team members, are here in America for that very reason, for their families, for a better life for their families. So we try to think holistically, and we're trying to listen and understand better the complexities of our workforce, so that the training orientation we do is really relevant.
That's great. Well, good. So another question that came up then is, once your team members have completed the classes or certifications, are there internal opportunities that exist within Tyson for career advancement, that align with their new credentials, or is that still part of this new program, and are you still trying to think about that and figure that out?
Yeah, great question. So yes, we're working on those things now. So one of the things we're working on is an internal workforce development certificate that includes things like digital literacy, some basic math skills, some culturally appropriate / relevant soft skills, that really sort of meets our really large ethnic mix. We haven't started piloting that yet, still in the development phase. And so obviously GED and citizenship have a hard start and a hard end, but our ESL classes are a lot more open-ended. So you might have a team member who's working on the line who may have had to drop out in the second grade, in their native country in order to help to raise siblings or work and help the family financially. And so they're working with really low literacy levels and have got a long road ahead of them. And so so they may be involved in ESL classes for not just months, but even years. But we are identifying the skills gaps between those team members working the lines and the places they want to go, and trying to offer program interventions around those skills gaps so that they can be in other applicant pools. But I'll be honest with you, it's interesting. One of the things that came out of the recent report from the University of Arkansas is that team members were motivated more for personal and familial reasons than career advancement. There was a significant amount of team members who were very career-minded and wanted to move up in the company and into different roles. But the majority were just motivated for personal and familial reasons. So an interesting finding from that report.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. I can't wait until you can really release all the results, because I think it'll be fascinating, and it'll also just validate all of the work and effort that you're putting into the program. Another question that came up is, if you're finding that participants or your team members are learning from and supporting each other in the program, are you seeing those types of kind of relationships almost happen ad hoc as people are figuring out, hey, I'm in this ESL class, let's get together and work together on this?
Yeah, another great question. So one of the things that came out of this recent report is two of the challenges that we have. Well, one is that trying to level the students in the right classes. So after they, sort of enroll in the program, they take a placement exam that puts them at a at a literacy level, and then we try to put them in the appropriate classes. Well, sometimes the adult education provider just doesn't have the capacity to provide instructors for each of the levels. So sometimes we combine levels in a single class. That doesn't happen all the time, but it happens sometimes. And so sometimes we can have some low literacy level students sort of get lost in the mix. And we find that that the first 5 hours, which really represents sort of 5 classes, the first 5 classes are the most important, because students are making decisions in those first 5 classes about, is this a safe place? Do I like the teacher? Can I understand the teacher? Do I feel like this is over my head? Do I feel like this is too far beneath me? Do I like the people I'm in the class with? Do I feel singled out in any kind of way where this is intimidating or embarrassing? And so what we're going to begin doing very, very quickly is create some sort of buddy system where the higher literacy level students can come alongside the lower level literacy students, especially during that first 5 hours, to make sure that they feel encouraged, that they have their questions answered, and that they don't get lost in the process. So we're hoping that this is going to be effective, because we've learned that if a student can make it past that first 5 hours, that they're likely to make educational gains after it.
Got it. So you really got to start out strong in the beginning, and figure some of it out for all those different levels. That makes sense. So we had another question that came up, kind of a follow-up question to a few questions ago about the career advancement within Tyson as a result of this program. So one of the other questions was, what's the percentage of frontline managers at Tyson who has worked their way up through the company from the front line, so being on the front line in the plant? Do you have that kind of information?
Yeah, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's a good number. Tyson plants like to hire from within. And to be super transparent, all of our locations, well, the majority of our locations are in very rural areas, and so oftentimes plant managers are really, they're even forced to hire from within. However, I would say that historically, that's just something that Tyson has always looked to hire within first. So a great number of our frontline supervisors come from within the plant, from the lines.
Great. Well, it sounds like this program is only going to help that happen even more often, which is fantastic. So just last question for you to kind of wrap things up, and that is, I know you referenced earlier that you've been working with the workforce development centers, which, having worked with them myself, I know that I think they're probably thrilled to work with Tyson, and as you referenced a little bit, probably intimidated as well, given just the scale of your program. And Tyson is a huge, huge company. Do you think that this type of program could work for any size company? And is the best way to kind of think about starting to replicate this program is partnering with the workforce centers, or is there another route that you would suggest?
Yeah, no, if any of the companies listening in are interested, I would definitely reach out to, if you're in a single location, I would reach out to whatever literacy agent exists in your county. Sometimes that's a state adult ed program, but oftentimes it's a local literacy council, and we've had great success with both. They operate differently, they're funded differently, but we've had great success with both. And both of them are very, very eager to work with local businesses and even large corporations, because again, a good portion of their budget comes from these federal monies, sometimes as much as 25%. And again, those monies come with some stipulation of working with businesses to strengthen local workforce and the economy. So I would definitely recommend connecting. And we're not only just connecting with the adult ed, the adult basic education component of these state agencies, but we're also connecting with their technical training as well. So in Texas, we're just about to launch in Texas in January, And we're working with the Skills Development Fund to provide some training, hopefully in the areas of maintenance and IT and some other areas. So it won't just be adult basic education, but technical training as well. And these are federal and state dollars that are out there available to all of us.
Well, and that's an important point, because I think that companies need to know that there are resources out there that can help kind of either subsidize or fully pay for some of that training, which is key. So that's really important. So it's a low-cost way to help support your employees, which is fantastic. Well,
Absolutely.
Kevin, I mean, with that, we're pretty much out of time. I want to thank you today for spending the time with us. I think this is an amazing program. Clearly, there's lots of interest in it, and so I'm hoping that some of our participants today will kind of go back to their own companies and say, how do we replicate this or offer some kind of program similar to this within our own company? And with all the individualizing that you're doing, really glad that you did take the time to spend with us today, because we know you're super busy. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Good. You got it. For those of you who are still with us, I just want to remind you to go ahead and please complete the survey. As I said earlier, one respondent will receive a $15 gift card from Amazon. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us on today's webinar. As I mentioned, I certainly learned a lot. I'm sure that all of you did. So we're hoping that you'll take that new knowledge and do something good. And everyone enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again.